Think about the last meal you had. Picture it. Was it a quick sandwich for lunch? Was it an afternoon snack, a pain au chocolat with a bitter coffee? We humans love food. We're obsessed with food. But today I'm here to talk about a particular subset of food, which are foods that go beyond mere sustenance, foods that evoke adventure, discovery, foods that make you jump on a plane, buy a ticket, travel thousands of miles, cross an ocean, foods that are worth traveling for. So what are these foods that are worth traveling for? Maybe it's an impossible reservation, a once-in-a-lifetime meal at a 3-star Michelin. Maybe it's perfect sushi in Japan or perfect pasta in Italy. Maybe it's another one that we have closer to home, pinchos. People fly from all over the world to eat pinchos. Yes, in part that's because they want to experience authentic local cuisine, in this case Basque. But a big part of it is that pinchos are more than just food. Pinchos are a way of life. They are a social construct. They have a really long list of unspoken, unwritten rules, yet they're somehow so fun to eat and to experience. And they get people on the plane. To understand the pincho, first we really need to just go back to basics and talk about what is a pincho. So a pincho is a bit of food. You can eat it in 2 or 3 bites. You eat it standing up at the bars in Basque Country. I can see maybe some of you are thinking, okay, what's the difference between pinchos and tapas? Well, tapas traditionally have been free. They are a little bigger than pinchos. Maybe it's one food item like meatballs or fried fish, various in a little plate, whereas pinchos have always been a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more constructed. They should be eaten in 2 or 3 bites, and they've never been free. But the real secret to what a pincho is that it's not just food. It's a way of life specific to here, to this corner of the world. A pincho without a bar is not a pincho. A pincho without a glass of wine and a friend and a great conversation is like the tree falling in the forest with no one around to hear it. Did it even exist? Pinchos are not only a what, they're a where, they're a who you're with, and they're inextricable from the social situation. Now, this is me many years ago. I remember my first trip to San Sebastian. I was a study abroad student, 20 years old. I remember walking down the gorgeous Urumea River, looking over La Concha, one of Europe's most beautiful beaches. But my jaw did not hit the ground until I walked into my first pincho bar. I was shocked. It was loud, it was bustling, it was so fun, and most of all, there was a bar full of food that you could just go up to, grab one, and eat it, and then pay at the end. And for an American, for me, it was heaven. Now, of course, that I've lived in San Sebastian for 15 years, I know that the first bar I went to was actually a horrible place. I know that the first pincho I ordered, which I thought was so delicious, was a bola de carne, one of the most basic of all the basic pinchos. But even so, I was captivated. So what is it about pinchos that makes them so magnetic? Let's delve a little bit deeper and go into how the pincho came to be. Because pinchos didn't just spontaneously appear across the bar tops of northern Spain and Basque Country. They were born right in the center of San Sebastian about 100 years ago, which is not actually that long when you take into account that this little corner of the world is one of the oldest cultures in Europe. The Basque language is a language isolate. Nobody knows where it came from, but it's been around for millennia, despite the fact that it was only first written down in the 1500s, and the first Basque book was published. So these people are good at tradition, right? And they're also really good at inventing and improving on and creating new traditions, especially culinary. If there is no tradition, there is no evolution. That's a quote from José Carlos Capel, who is the food critic at El País, and that has never been more true than with the Basque people. In the 1970s, some Basque chefs got together in San Sebastian, Juan Mari Arzac, Pedro Subijana, several others, and they decided that they wanted to put Basque cuisine on the map as high as the French cuisine. So they got together and they built on their Basque traditions, they built on their admiration for product, and they created the first avant-garde culinary movement in Spain. And that's what put Spain on the map. And that is what inspired one of the best restaurants in the world, El Bulli, 5-time winner, #1 restaurant. And the winner that was crowned last night, Disfrutar in Barcelona, is all happened because of the movement here in San Sebastian. That's what I find so fascinating. It's a culture that's simultaneously one of the oldest ever, but also innovating. So when I started writing my book that Caroline mentioned in 2019, I quickly realized that pinchos were a history that was being lived. It was not being written down. Nobody was taking the time to capture these stories in writing. I mean, I can't really blame them because going for pinchos is so fun. They were just living it. But to write the book of pinchos, I had to start interviewing. I interviewed over 100 chefs, 100 bar owners, journalists, and people, and tried to chronologue as best as I could the history of the pincho. I started an Excel document. Every time anybody told me any date, put it in a row. I ended up with almost 1,000 rows of different stories and data. And one of the first findings that I was able to come to, the first conclusions, was that pinpointing the birth of the pincho is impossible. This is a quote from Jesus Castro from La Espiga in San Sebastián. It's a black hole in history. Nobody knows the how or the why. However, we know a little bit. So the real origin of the pincho was alcohol-fueled and ambiguous. There were these stores all over the old town of San Sebastián, ultramarinos, bodeguillas, sidrerías, where people would go to buy vino a granel. So you could fill up a glass of wine, you could fill up a big bottle of wine for your house, and sometimes they would bring some snacks with them. Well, the shop owners soon wised up and started offering these snacks for money. And then soon bars began to put food out on the counter. And that led to the hallowed tradition of chiquiteo. So chiquiteo is a custom unique to Basque Country. To paint the picture, you go meet up with your friends, your cuadrilla, before dinner or lunch. You invite them all to a round in the first bar, and they use these glasses that were these thick bottom tumblers so that the serving of wine was quite small. Then you move on to the next bar, and another person invites the round, and so on and so on. And I have it on really good authority from many sources that the minimum number of rounds was usually around 10, and that up to 30 rounds before they would go home for dinner to their wives and children. So you can imagine that necessitates a little bit of food on the stomach to soak up the alcohol. Enter the pincho. So it started off simple: hard-boiled egg, olives, seafood in a can, and then it started to get strung onto a toothpick, and that was the banderia, the example of the first pincho. So as the century went on, pinchos grew in popularity, and bars became known for their signature pincho. They got more and more elaborate. As you can see here in this picture, this is one of the best pincho bars to have ever existed, Aloña Berri. It was in Gros in San Sebastián, and you can see it's already getting a little bit more elaborate. These are becoming small works of art. And as Spain came out of the dictatorship in the 1980s, people had more buying power. There was more appetite. People were out more. The pincho had its first competition. Propelled by this growing consumer demand, pincho did what it does best: captivated the hearts and minds of the people. Then came a big change. This bar opened by this man, December 21st, 1999. This is La Cuchara de San Telmo. When it opened, on the bar top, it had no pinchos. It had a chalkboard menu. People were confused, but as they started to trickle in, they realized you had to order the pincho off of the menu, and they were these dishes, small, but worthy of any fine dining restaurant. So this pincho no longer had to be a companion for a drink. It opened the idea to the door to the idea of pincho as dinner. This was a true sea change for the style of eating for pinchos. Not having to display them on the bar opened up a ton of possibilities for chefs, and creativity abounded. So now the sky is the limit, and locals here really embraced that. So that's how pinchos took on the form that we currently know and love. But what really struck me as I was doing my research was the pincho's role in cultural identity. I heard thousands of anecdotes. Some of them told me how a pincho came to be. Some of them told me the value of hard work that the Basques have. Some of them, a lot of them, showed me that the people here really see themselves as a vessel and a vector for history and tradition. This is Bar Chepeta, founded in 1972. Just started out with a couple pinchos on the bar, but the owners started little by little perfecting the recipe for the marinated anchovy. Now it has what could be one of the best anchovies in the whole world, marinated in vinegar with a secret recipe. This is Manu Marañón, the current generation. He and his mother are the only two people in the world that know how to make this anchovy. And they were riding down the highway one night, and they had a really close call with a tractor trailer. So they pulled over, the adrenaline pumping, and they looked at each other and they said, "The anchovy." And they went the next morning to the notary public, wrote down the recipe, signed it, sealed it, and locked it in a box in a local bank to save the recipe for future generations. So an anchovy recipe in San Sebastian is the equivalent of a Van Gogh in a museum or the Parthenon in Athens. It's patrimony, it's valued, it's enjoyed, it's treasured, and it's protected. But what these stories really showed me was that pinchos feed our humanity. They reflect the Basque spirit, the Basque love for food, and the commitment to excellence. Pinchos are a part of our daily life. Here and only here, it's not enough to eat sitting down. It's not enough to eat by yourself. According to the Oxford Economics and National Center for Social Research, 76% of people who ate socially felt happy, compared to 62% of people that did not. Turns out the magic of being elbow to elbow really does have a statistical correlation with happiness. So if you add in a little bit of sautéed foie gras and some fizzy chocolate, you can imagine that those happiness levels skyrocket. So why are pinchos so magnetic? Why have they lasted 100 years? And why do they get people on planes to come here and eat them? It's because pinchos are more than food. They're a celebration of life. They're expressions of creativity. They show us the joy and remind us that the act of eating is a really profound experience. They remind us of our past. They enrich our present. And they inspire the future. So I think, and what I came to the conclusion of after writing my book was that pinchos are a window into the human condition. They show the importance of tradition and the joy of creativity. They show us food can be a source of pride, a way to connect. In a world that is ever more fast-paced and ever more fragmented, they bring us together and they allow us to connect over food. As we look into the future, I'm sure pinchos will continue to evolve. But what I've observed is that they'll always be about bringing people together, culture, history, and reminding us of the shared human experience. Thank you.